you guys about today is how you can, in a moment of genuine care, have a lifetime of positive impact. And I was talking to you guys a little bit about what you do, and you're going to be ambulance workers, so we'll focus a little bit on that. One thing that many people don't realize about me is that when I was a kid, I had open heart surgery. And what that experience did to me, because I clearly remember being in the hospital, being woken up at 4 in the morning to, whatever, take my blood pressure or something, and then looking out the window in the dark at the parking lot waiting for my parents to come. So that experience of, when I was 7 years old having that surgery set me up for a lifetime of being afraid of doctors and needles and anything medical that anybody could do. And I didn't like to be sticking a tongue depressor in my mouth. I mean, I was deathly afraid of anything that had to do with doctors. So one thing that I'll always tell you right away is remember that there is a scared kid inside everybody. So every one of your patients has something that can trigger their fear. And you don't know what that is. So you have to be ready for it. And I'll give you some tips on how to be ready for it in a little bit. I've been a teacher here at Skyline since 1990. I'm a marine biologist. I grew up in Wisconsin, so that was a little bit of a hurdle. I came out here for grad school. I found out after I got out here that I got seasick. So here I am, a marine biologist from Wisconsin who gets seasick. So I couldn't really work on a boat. What I could do, though, is I could teach about whales and dolphins. And what I figured out is that once you're a professor, like at a community college like this, you can weave whales and dolphins into anything. You teach about the circulatory system. Well, whales have a heart, so I would talk about their heart and their circulatory system. So I had a lot of fun doing that. I would go on field trips with my students to retrieve artifacts from beached whales, and I would, I did a lot with my students. I ran a local chapter of a Whale and Dolphin Conservation Society, and I was very active. And then pretty much everything changed. And my career was going pretty well. I was a single mom. And then in April of 2006, so remember I've been here since 1990. In April of 2006, I started getting sick. I started getting dizzy and nauseous, and there was no reason for it. I went to the doctor, told the doctor that I was feeling dizzy and nauseous, and they said, "Sherry, you have vertigo." What is vertigo? Oh, you're dizzy, right? So basically, I went to the doctor and said I was dizzy, and the doctor said, "Yes, Sherry, you're dizzy." They said there's nothing they can do about it. It's not dangerous. It'll go away on its own, and you just have to live with it. So this was April of 2006. In May and June, my symptoms were getting worse and worse, until finally in July, I kept going back to the doctor. They kept telling me that it was nothing. It'll go away on its own. In July of 2006, I finally complained enough that they sent me to an ENT, an ear, nose, and throat doctor. Actually, can you guys take one of these pamphlets? Of course. They sent me to an ENT. So on July 1st, I went to the ENT.
Should I take one of these papers as well?
Not the paper, just the pamphlet. And they did a very simple hearing test. And what they realized is that I had some hearing loss only on one side. And that alerted my doctor to the fact that there could be something wrong. So she said there's a very slight chance that you could have this one kind of tumor. So we're just going to send you for an MRI just to rule it out. And you guys all know what an MRI is, right? So on July 5th of 2006, I had my MRI. Before I went in to have the MRI, they said when you're done, go home, and we'll call you in a few days with the results. Immediately after, so this was like an hour later, they said, "Wait here, we're going to print all of the films, and you're going to take them with you." Well, that's a pretty drastic change in attitude from before I had the MRI to after. So you don't have to be a brain surgeon to know something's going on. Well, sure enough, my ENT called me that next morning and said that they did find something on my MRI, and I needed to have brain surgery on it. By the next Monday, I was meeting with a brain surgeon at UCSF who told me that What they had to take out was very routine. Had a really good prognosis. I'd be in the hospital for 5 to 10 days, and I'd be maybe recuperated home for another 3 weeks. So by that measure, I had my surgery on July 26, 2006. And, from the calendar, I was fully expecting to go home the first week of August. I was fully expecting to go back to work when school started the middle of August. That was my plan. I had a couple of students acting as nannies to take care of my kids, who were 12 and 8 at the time. So I didn't prepare for a long stay in the hospital. Well, this routine thing that they were going to take out was a tumor that was pressing on my cerebellum called an acoustic neuroma. And you can see on this film the tumor's right there. So it was a pretty large acoustic neuroma, and it was about the size of a golf ball. And they call this, routine brain surgery. Well, routine brain surgery, okay, it's routine to them. Well, something went wrong as I was either on the operating table or right after. Something went wrong, and instead of spending 5 to 10 days in the hospital, I was in the hospital for about 246 days. I finally came home between hospitals and rehab centers. Finally came home at the end of March 2007. So to put that into a little bit of perspective, my kids, were 12 and 8. They were in 7th grade and 4th grade at the time. I missed that whole school year. So I, was just gone for that whole school year. Well, what I learned when I was in the hospital was that, and throughout my life as a patient, is that sometimes you get really wonderful, compassionate care. Sometimes you get judgmental, insensitive, very non-compassionate care. And this disparity between, really excellent care and such not good care was troubling to me. And I decided that I could make a difference by going out and talking to groups like you guys and not teaching you how to be empathetic, because I'm assuming you're all empathetic, but teaching you how to express empathy. And the first way to make sure that you're always expressing empathy is to have the attitude of empathy. When you have an attitude of empathy in your heart, you will express it. So what I've done is I made up these pamphlets, and these little booklets have Moment of Care, Lifetime Impact on the front. And you can also see that I, kept weaving my love of whales and dolphins into everything that I do. My logo for this non-profit organization called Lifetime of Impact is a dolphin with a stethoscope. And what you can see if you look in, I'm going to have you do that because my hands busy. When you look inside, you'll see that I've split this into modules. There's modules, attitude of empathy, attitude of cooperation, and remember that there's a scared kid inside each of us. Those are 3 things that I really want you to remember as you're going through your career and when you start working with patients. For each module, there's a story, an activity that I want you to do, and some questions that I want you to think about and try to answer. So if you guys go ahead and open the booklet and turn the page to the attitude of empathy section. One of the hardest things, has anybody here ever been a patient in the hospital? Okay. So one of the hardest things about being a patient in the hospital, especially when you can't move your limbs at all, is that feeling of helplessness. When you have to have a nurse or a doctor or somebody helping you with everything that you have to do. You can't turn over by yourself. You can't, drink at all. Well, I couldn't swallow for 6 months. So you can't get any kind of liquid into your body. There's nothing you can do for yourself. And I want to give you guys a little bit of a taste of that helpless feeling that patients have. And the way that I want to do this is, first what I would like you to do is raise your hand and your non-dominant hand. So if you're a righty, you have to raise your left hand as high into the air as you can. And whenever you feel like putting it down, go ahead and put it down. So this way you have control. Okay, don't be heroes. Okay, pretend you're tired. You're getting tired. You're getting sleepy. Go ahead and put it down. You guys had all the control. You could put down whatever you wanted to. Now we're going to do that again, only this time you don't have control over when you get to put your hand down. I have that control. So this time you have to keep your hand up until I say it's okay to put it down. If it aches, that's good. That's part of this activity. So I want you to have that feeling of helplessness. So go ahead and raise your hand again. And remember, it's your non-dominant hand. When I was in the hospital recovering from this, and I couldn't, breathe for 3.5 weeks. I had a trach tube put in. I had, I couldn't move, I couldn't sit up, I couldn't swallow, I couldn't blink, I couldn't do anything. So one thing they did in the efforts of, or under the guise of building up my strength, they would put me in this chair called the neuro chair. I called it the torture chair. They'd put me in this chair. It was like a recliner. The more they reclined it, the easier it'd be for me to tolerate it. Some nurses put me in it, put me straight up, so I really had to hold my head up. And, it's hard to hold your head up when you have no muscles left in your neck because you've been lying around for a month. So they would put me in this chair, and it would hurt so much immediately. They would leave me there for 2 hours. So for 2 hours, I was in agony. I couldn't scream because I didn't have any voice, but trying to scream to get them to take me out of this chair. And I'd be in this chair for 2 hours. And you guys are having a little bit of a taste of that. Pretend for a minute if you had to keep your arm up for 2 hours and you were not capable of putting it down. You guys don't look like you're in pain. I know you're all young and healthy, but you can go ahead and put it down. And what I want you to do at home, and what I have written in the activity part of this module, is at home, I'm not going to be there to tell you when you can put your arm down. Do it against the clock. So hold your arm up for 1 minute. Hold your arm up for 5 minutes. Try to hold your arm up for 10 minutes. Make it hurt a little bit, just to give you that feeling of what it's like, because it truly does hurt patients when they cannot control their own body and they're forced into an uncomfortable situation or uncomfortable position for a long period of time. It hurts. It's not just uncomfortable, it hurts. And if you can feel that, you can start to in some way relate to what your patients are going through. As you're going through this and you're working with a patient, you want their cooperation. And think about this for a second. You're trying to do a project with another person. Your project might be to get a tube down their throat so that they can breathe. Your project might be to get an IV into their arm so you can deliver some medication. Your project might be you want to load them onto a gurney and transport them. In any case, you're trying to do a project with them. So it's much easier to do a project together if both parties are cooperating. Would you guys agree with that premise? Have you ever done a project with somebody where you're really into it, but they're not? You guys can relate to that? Well, I'll tell you that when you're doing a project with your patient, you guys are working hard to be doing that project. You're working hard to be the one in that room. You're working hard to be the one sticking the needle into that person's vein. You guys are working really hard. That's your goal. One of your goals is to be there. They are not. They're mad they have to be there. They think life is unfair. They think the world's out to get them. They might be not very nice. They might be not in a very good mood. Maybe they need a drink. No, they're not there to cooperate with you. They don't want to cooperate with you. So there's the problem, is that you're trying to do a project with them. You're excited about this project. Like, oh yeah, you get to stick a needle in their arm. They're like, mad and scared and in pain, and you're a stranger, excited about doing things to them. They're not going to be the same level of cooperation. So you need to gain their cooperation. And how do you gain their cooperation? They have to know that you're there to help them, and that you're there to be, and that you are empathetic, that you're showing empathy, that you can kind of see what they're going through. You can acknowledge what they're going through. Acknowledge that they're going through a tough time. If they're mean to you, shake it off and still be extra nice to them. So one other thing that I want to do with you guys right now to make sure that you have some idea of what they're feeling like. Many of your patients will have a compromised airway. And what I brought for you to simulate this compromised airway, I brought this special tool. I call this a special tool to reduce airway width. And what I'd like you to do, I'm going to pass around this bag. You can each take one of these special tools and pass it on. So again, these are special tools to reduce airway width. Special tool to reduce airway width. That didn't take me as long as you would think to come up with that. Some people call these things straws, so I'll start calling them a straw right now. And as you can tell when you get it in your hand, I'm using reusable special tools. These are reusable straws. The marine biologist in me knows that disposable straws end up, killing those whales and dolphins that I'm trying to protect. So we're going to use reusable straws. This is also my gift to you. You don't have to give these back at the end. These are not reused. These are new to you, but you can reuse them. You can take them home. You can practice this exercise every day so that you remember what it feels like to have a compromised airway. You can use them to drink out of if you like. Some people do that. Who knows? But you can use them for whatever you want. Do we have enough? I hope we have enough. I'm going to wait a second until everyone has one. While we're waiting, because I know they're still passing them out, any questions so far? Did I run out? Oh yeah, enough. Okay. What I want you to do is first, without the special tool, just through your regular, air holes, take 5 deep breaths. Just so you remember how it feels to breathe normally. 5 deep breaths. Thank you. Okay, now what I'd like you to do is put the straw into your mouth, close your nose, either on your system or hold it closed. Take 5 deep breaths through the straw. I can hear you guys breathing. Is it harder to breathe through the straw? Okay, that's a little bit of what your patients with a compromised airway, whether they have a trach tube or if they're just compromised in other ways, what they feel like. So you add that they can't really breathe very well. 2, they're scared and they're in pain, and you're a stranger in their room trying to do something to them. You have to have empathy. You have to get them to connect with you immediately for you to be successful at your job. And I will tell you one thing about the gurney, and I'm usually reminded because the gurney's in here, but when you put something on a gurney and you're wheeling them around,